Okay, I have one more update here. Um, so I said that Kirkland and Ellis were representing Hollinger's financial division. It was actually their external um, financial division, which is KPMG. It's an auditing group, or it was serving as their auditing group. They're one of the big four accounting organizations. Now they're based out of the Netherlands. Okay, and this is the Netherlands. You have to remember is a large part of the British establishment. If you remember, William and Mary took over England. I think it's called the Glorious Revolution. Then you have the intermingling of the Dutch East India Company and the East India Company, which basically one absorbs the other, and you get things starting like some aspects of the slave trade, but mostly the Opium Wars. And the British Empire was smuggling opium until up till the League of Nations, I believe, put an end to that. But anyway, if you look into the organization's history, I think it started out as Robert Fletcher and Co. And then this guy named William Barclay Peat comes on the scene. Now, there's tons of different people that join the firm, and the name changes again and again. But it's interesting that you have a Barclay there because all of the Barclays came from Scotland. They moved to the Netherlands and then they moved back, and that's where you get the Barclay brothers. But I think you also get this guy. I think his name's Stephen Barclay, that's heading the Brexit Commission. And Stephen Barclay was part of the money laundering division. So it's just interesting that you have the Barclay family come up again in this thing. But Stephen Barclay was handling the money laundering division of the Barclays. Now he's not a Barclay brother. I think he's a distant relative. But yeah, so he ended up heading the Brexit Commission, Boris Johnson's cabinet. So this guy who was basically selected along with Trump to be the next prime minister, well, look what happened. And the Barclays are the people behind um, Renaissance Technologies ascendancy. They gave them a special kind of financial instrument that gave them special advantage in the market, and you can look up the history of Renaissance technology. There's a dossier on their entire trading history, basically, out there on the internet, and it's the Barclays that are the most important bank. Now, the Barclays were also the first people to meet with Conrad Black when he tried first started to try to sell off the entire company. They're behind the scenes in the Trump campaign and Brexit the entire way. So I just thought that was interesting. But then you can look at this company, and it's one of those Gangster Planet companies. If there's a guy that wrote a book called Gangster Planet, but this is a big firm that helps with tax shelter fraud. And a tax shelter is basically usually done through real estate, so that you end up paying no taxes on the final thing. And it's done with tax credits usually. It's a complex thing, but there's some sort of controversy thing. 2003, the IRS issued summons to KPMG for information on tax shelters and their investors. February 2004, the U.S. Justice Department commissioned a criminal inquiry. United States member firm KPMG LLP was accused by the U.S. Department of Justice of fraud and marketing, abuse of tax shelters. KPMG fired or forced the retirement of over a dozen who were involved. KPMG admitted criminal wrongdoing, creating fraudulent tax shelters, blah, blah, blah. Not very interesting, but in 2007, the criminal conspiracy charges against KPMG were dropped. I don't really see much else on here. In 2016, the Canadian Revenue Agency was found to have offered an amnesty to KPMG clients caught using an offshore tax avoidance scheme on the Isle of Man. If you understand the Isle of Man, that's a huge uh, so-called Gangster Planet, Anglo-Israeli uh, tax haven. The banking club in that area, the banking club that so there's the City of London, and then there's the Club of Isles, and the Club of Isles is just another name for a multiplicity of different banks and financial agencies that are involved in tax schemes and all sorts of skullduggery that's associated with these networks. So there's that. In 2017, KPMG terminated 5 partners in its audit practice, including the head of its audit practice in the U.S. after investigation of advanced confidential knowledge of planned audit inspections by its public company accounting oversight board. This followed criticism about KPMG's failure to uncover illegal sales practices at Wells Fargo or potential corruption at FIFA, the growing international body of soccer. Now, another interesting thing is there's this lady that was involved in the FIFA scandals earlier on that is a very special person in Epstein's flight manifest. But she's one of the few people that he had one-on-one trips with. That most of the other people he never had one-on-one trips. But she is heavily involved with these Israeli security companies that are present in London now. So, yeah, so it's this article called "The Epstein Associate Nobody's Talking About: The IDF Linked Bond Girl." Nicole Junkermann, that's her name. Yeah, and she was involved with the FIFA corruption scandal with Sepp Blatter, and she's also listed in the Panama Papers. So you look at something like this KPMG, which is dealing with the Club of Isles tax haven and tax shelter industry. Uh, there's some sort of connection here. Yeah, and here's where it comes in with intelligence. If you've ever heard the term banking intelligence. 2015, KPMG issued a controversial report that implicated former Finance Minister Pravin Gordon in the creation of a legal intelligence gathering unit at South African Revenue Service. This report was seen by elements of the media to be part of a wider Gupta-linked state-captured conspiracy with the aim of forcing Gordon out of his post. The report was withdrawn by KPMG in September 2017, turning the IRS Commissioner of the South African Revenue Service, Tom Moran. So you have something that's trying to overthrow government. Yeah. So this is a very important corporation too. That was the auditor for Hollinger Corporation, and basically let them perform all of their fraudulent activities which were going on.